a kid like Talvidia with his style of meat and potatoes, that kind of forward?
Well, he was a late round pick. He was outstanding. I mean, Penn State, he was a guy. He got hurt though. Unfortunately, he got hurt, and he missed a good chunk of last season. But I specifically remember tweeting like, "Do the Devils and these late round picks? These kids are going to hit. Whether it be Bratt or whether you want to talk about Moynihan or you want to talk about the kid they got in 2018. Who did I forget? I forgot his name. Pakala, the kid Itu Pakala.
I was going to mention him.
Like these kids, the players. And the thing about Talbot, he's a physical guy. He plays a North American style. He's not some flashy stay on the outside. He is a grinded out. You call meat and potatoes, but you know what? Don't sleep on his skill because he could be a playmaker. He's got top line potential, and I think Penn State had him on, and Penn State won the national title, didn't they? A couple of years ago, came close to it. And I think he was a key player on that, or maybe he joined them a year later. But in any event, still, I think this kid was an outstanding late round gem, and you just want him to heal up. He's one of those kids that's going to show up to camp, and he's going to make everybody go bonkers because they're going to have to work as hard as he can on the ice, and it's very tough to do because he's that hard of a worker, really beginning for the shift to the end.
So, I was talking to another one of my Devils friends who's a writer for Pucks and Pitchforks. His last name is Brown, Joseph Brown. Okay. And I said to him, talking about, when, most of us younger kids growing up in the 90s played rec sports, we don't like the, participation trophy being handed over. But you always wanted to always be competitive. And I find guys like Talvidia and all these other late round players, especially Jesper Bratt, and these other late round picks that the Devils find tend to be the guys that tend to be the most motivated. Yeah. What can you say to some of the up and coming draftees for 2021 that have that extra drive? And what would you say to parents, raising the next generation of hockey players?
Well, 2021 is definitely going to be an interesting draft because there's no like clear cut number one. And I know that watching a lot of these kids though, like the more I do this, the more I'm going to lean towards effort and IQ over shot and playmaking, and I know that playmaking kind of ties into IQ, but the kid LaRue, I think I'm pronouncing his name.
Yeah, LaRue. Who plays in the QJ?
Yeah, he went from Moncton to Halifax. I mean, this kid, the effort is freaking outstanding. I mean, he's just nonstop. A lot of the smaller guys, it seems, that are available, just like tenacious. The Lucius kid on the NTDP, even Atu Ratu. I mean, he was my preseason number one, but I never once questioned this kid's work ethic because he gets hurt. He's hurt now, but he always flying and hitting and being involved after the whistle. So with this class, there's a lot. I mean, we could be on this podcast another hour, and I could go down my list. Simon Robertson. Oh, I love Simon Robertson, man. That kid is going to be in my top 5. I don't care what people say. I'm putting him in my top 5 because the kid out of Skellefteå in Sweden, I just love the effort, man. Like I call it the give a shit factor. And they have such a high give a shit factor.
I love that.
From the beginning of the shift to the end of the shift. And, if you're a parent out there and you want your kid to play hockey one day, yeah, like if they're a finesse guy, you don't want them to be that rough and tumble, but you're going to see a change. I think it's going to really start with Lafreniere. The fact that we have a number 1 overall pick, and I'm not knocking Jack Hughes. I'm not knocking Austin Matthews. I'm not knocking, some of the other flashier types. But when you have a guy who could show the fan base that, hey, I could score, I could shoot, but also like Joel Farabee, he's a perfect example of a kid that just does not stop working. And he was a first-round pick. He was a high-scoring kid for the junior programs. And now look at him. He's a top 9 winger for a Stanley Cup contender, or deserves to be at least. So you got to tell these kids that at some point they got to stop making it about themselves. The 1-on-4 dangles and deeks, all right, yeah, every now and again you're going to try to do it. I get it. But to be able to be effective off the puck will definitely get you to the NHL. When you get to the NHL, the coach will eventually tell you like, hey, man, hey, Jack Hughes, don't worry about checking people, okay? We want you to create open ice. We want you to be a playmaker. We want you to be a setup guy. Let, your other guys worry about the physicality and things like that. But at a minimum, though, when they show up, though, they have to have that versatility. Not all the time. Listen, a lot of teams, look at Tampa. They've got some guys in that team that aren't necessarily like all that physical or you consider to be mashers. But look at Anthony Cirelli, man. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that every team would kill to have an Anthony Cirelli on their team. I mean, that guy, he was a third-round pick. He was a money player as a third-round pick on a veteran Oshawa team. They scored the Memorial Cup winning goal, for crying out loud. And I remember when I did this thing a couple of years ago called Calder Watch, where I literally watched all the Calder eligible kids in the NHL and using basic analytics, trying to figure out who's the most effective, high danger chances, scoring chances, primary points, 5-on-5 scoring, so on and so forth. And that was the year where Elias Pettersson was smoking everybody and Brady Tkachuk was smoking everybody. And those were the big names. But it was Cirelli that every night I'd compile my stats. Every time he played, he'd be among the top 3 to 5 performers in terms and minimum ice time. He was on the fourth line with Matthew Joseph. So to answer your question, or to just, I guess, close it up, is that you have to offer more than just scoring. Anybody could go to junior hockey and have 10 scoring chances a game. What are you going to do when you get to the AHL and you have 1 scoring chance a game? What do you do to the NHL when you have 0 scoring chances a game? And that's exactly what happened with Elias Anderson, where he was like, I'm not effective. He was supposed to be effective off the puck, and he wasn't. He wasn't effective anywhere. And so the Rangers eventually got tired of him, and he ended up getting shipped. So, never take anything for granted. When you show up, if you've been given the honor to be drafted by an NHL team, and that's what the kids always say, it's an honor, it's an honor, it's an honor. You got to friggin' live up to that, though. You got to pay it back. They paid you. They gave you the contract. Not the contract, but they gave you the honor of wearing the jersey and having your name called. And it's a very disappointing day for a lot of kids. It's a privilege. Well, you got to now put the work in on and off the ice to make that team look smart. Unfortunately, a lot of kids, they really can't do it. Whether they get sucked into the lifestyle or they lose the desire, or they get swallowed up by that competition that we talked about.
Yeah. And I was going to just say, I was talking to Will Scouch, I thought there was going to be 5 to 6 guys deep going possibly first overall. He said 8 to 10 possibly going first overall, through that area. What are you thinking tier-wise and depth-wise that our listeners would be glad to hear or honestly to hear?
There's no tier. There's no tier right now. There's no tier. I'm being honest with you. There's no top tier. There's no middle tier. It's wide open. I mean, the tier right might, if I'm not a big tier guy, but if I would construct a tier, there'd probably be like 45 guys in it. Because, and again, remember, you're trying to construct now listen, I'm not saying that Anton Olsen is as good as Owen Power, and I'm not saying that Boucher, that Tyler Boucher is as good as Aturatu. No. But I'm just saying, I watch every league. I consume it all. And so right now, when I made my first, I did my first top 32 for 2021. It was on my draft report. It was really I'm going to go with the guys who I watched by accident almost, because I don't focus on that previous year or the next year's draft class as much as the other ones. I don't think it's fair. And so, you do 376 scouting reports. That means you've watched a lot of kids and they were in their first draft year. So when I made my list for 2021, I'm going off of the tournaments I watched, the kids that were promoted to the adult level when it comes to Europe, the kids who were top players on their teams and the CHL level as a draft -1, 16, 17-year-old. And, trying to come up with that list, it was very difficult. Edvinsson, the defenseman, the kid from Sweden. So I saw a ranking the other day where he was in the top 5. I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that. I mean, kids, and I think that Anton Olsen might be a better prospect. But to answer your question, I have no tier. If I would make, right now, I could give you a top 10. I could give you 5 different top 10s because, Fabian Lee. So who's the best forward out of Sweden? Is it Fabian Liesel? Is it Simon Robertson? Is it Oscar Olsen? Is it William Eklund? I don't know. I watched these kids a ton the last couple of months, and even going back to last year, I have no idea. One guy's 5'8", the other guy's 6'2". The one guy could blister the shot. The other guy's a playmaker. It really is very difficult And this year specifically, what I'm going to have to look for is it might end up, I hate to say this, it might end up coming down to stats. It might end up coming down. Like, you know what? If William Eklund can be a 15-point guy for who's he on? He's on HV 71. If he could be a 15-point guy for HV, oh no, he's on UGuard. I'm sorry. If he could be a 15-point guy for them, but Olesen, right, and he's on HV 71, has 2 points in the adult league, I might have to give the edge to. I mean, I'm being honest with you, dude. Like, I do not know because it's that wide open. Usually in the past, it's been very easy for me to make a top 5, right? We knew coming into this year it was going to be some form or another of Holtz, Raymond, Byfield, Lafreniere, and then a couple other kids, right? Mm-hmm. Rossi maybe being in there, but Stutzler wasn't in there for me. Mercer wasn't up there for me. Lundell was in there. So Jake Sanderson wasn't in there for me. He was about like 25th overall. So, man, it's wide open. There is anyone that wants to come out and say definitively this guy is the best player for the 20-something draft, that is just their opinion. There is no metric. There's nothing you could come up with to determine that because it's crazy. And it's a defense-heavy draft too. So that's going to have a profound impact on the way the rankings go because you're going to have to rank defensemen who don't have fancy stats playing against adults like Zvozil, the kid out of the Czech Republic. He's not going to probably put up big fancy numbers, but he's been playing against men for like 2 years now. And I could go on and on and on talking about the defensemen. The Russian group is strong. The Swedish group, I think, is as good, right? I think the Swedish group is as good. You're not going to have a Holtz or Raymond, but depth-wise, all those defensemen absolutely on par. Pretty strong Czech group, very strong Russian group. And the most important thing is an outstanding NTDP. We didn't have that this year. We had one NTDP first-round pick, I believe, right? Bordelot and Tucker. Sanderson was the only one, right? No,
yeah, I mean, there were a few other Americans gone later.
Yeah, Bordelot went in the second round. Tuck, Smolanek, they went in the second round. Clevin went in the second round. Faber went in the second round. But the year prior, we had, 8, 9 NTDP kids going in the first round? This year, you might see that again because you got Luke Hughes. You know, you want to talk about Edvinsson. You want to talk about Power. You want to talk – what about Luke? Luke Hughes is fantastic. There's times where he looks like Quinn Hughes, but he's bigger than Quinn Hughes.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, man. I'm telling you. There are no tiers. I have no tier. My tier is like, 50 players deep.
Where is Luke Hughes likely ranked to go in the draft? Like, is he
top 5, top 10, top 5, top 10, maybe first overall? I mean, remember the NTDP, they have that 3-pronged schedule where they have the colleges, they got the international tournaments, and then they got the USHL. And, the USHL and international portion of the schedules are more telling because they're playing against the Eagle. But what if Hughes freaking goes and smokes the college kids? Which is something that Sanderson didn't really do from an offensive standpoint. He did do it defensively and physical from a physical standpoint. But, I mean, man, listen, I've spent so much time on freaking 2020. I'm still not done yet. I got like 6 more teams I got to recap because I'm recapping all 216 picks. And then I'm doing the team-by-team podcast. So I'm taking a step back from figuring 2021. I did my initial analysis. I'm more than confident I'll be able to catch up and do another draft report with almost 400 scouting reports. But it's crazy, man. 2021 is probably going to be the most challenging that it's not related to COVID. It's just challenging because we don't know who the top 5 are going to be.
Yeah, like one of my personal favorites, like I've done like 6 guys already. McTavish's son. Yeah, you have Graham Clark's brother, Brant.
Yeah, he could be first overall.
He's absolutely amazing. The way not only does he score, he like takes the crease like very seriously, and he just is a very supportive, fast attacking player. He does when he scores, he reminds me of D'Angelo and PK Subban and like that kind of player.
Yeah, he's got flash, he's got grit, he's got speed. I mean, he's not like a end-to-end rushing, like blow you out of your seat kind of a defenseman, but he's got very good speed. And he definitely joins the rush. He joins the rush a ton. And Barry wasn't very. I mean, that blue line was a veteran blue line. and he was able to stand out on it. So, Barry, this season kind of changed when they made all those trades.